Okay, let's get started. Good morning to everyone. Hope you are off to a great start. Uh, Today we're going to talk about thinking up, and the purpose of this is to uh, talk to you about being a little bit creative and thinking outside the box, and doing things a little bit differently than you're used to doing. I've got a lot of stories to tell you today. There's some really hidden gems in these stories, and I tell these stories so that you can learn from them. Some of these stories, or all these stories, are actual. They're the truth there, and so these we don't make up any of these stories. And so I want you to pay close attention. And again, I talk fast, but we record these sessions. So I would say to you, go back and listen to the recording when you in your spare time. And I think you'll pick up some other finer points in here. But again, there's a lot to be learned from some of these stories that I'm going to tell you today. So, all right. So we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about think up cultivation. We're going to talk about think up close, and we're going to talk about think up stewardship. Those three areas we're going to focus on today, and I'm going to tell you stories in each one of these categories. All right, let's talk about cultivation first. I've learned years ago that a PS was really important when you're sending out letters, because I know this, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. People do not read these long letters that you may spend 3 weeks writing. They don't read them, and so if you want your point to get across, you've got to put a PS on that letter. So let me tell you a story. This is a story that at a university we were working with, and the individual, the VP for development, understood what I talked about when I said you always put a PS on your letter. Now, what's in that PS? That PS could actually be the first sentence of the letter itself. But here's what this person did. On the bottom of the letter, this person sent a check in for $1,000. The donor gave $1,000 to the university library. So, this development officer sent him a letter and said, I appreciate, in a PS, he said, I appreciate very much your support of our library. As you well know, the library is a cornerstone of any institution of higher education, and your gift will dramatically impact our mission of educating students. That was his PS, and that's a pretty long PS. But here's what happened. About 10 days later, the vice president received a handwritten letter from the donor with a check for $10,000, citing your handwritten PS caught my eye, and I felt obligated to return a handwritten note. I think your sentiment deserves a larger gift. Please use my gift to strengthen the library and its reach at the school. This is a point in where we talk about the importance of a PS, and this actually resulted in a much larger check. I'm saying to you, and I give gifts to a lot of people, and rarely when they send me a thank you note, rarely do they send me, well, they put a PS on there. Even if you just say thank you again, or thank you for the impact your gift is making on our institution, our organization, please put a PS on there. A PS. That's what people will read. If you don't hear anything else, get off this the seminar right now. But remember to put PSs on all your letters. It's that important. Let's talk about this. You get people involved, and they become committed, and the dollars follow the commitment. That's what cultivation's about. Remember, maybe I've told this story before. I'll tell it to you again. Where people say to me, "Well, Jerry, we've got a multi-billionaire across town. Let's go get his money." And I said, well, "Wait a minute. Let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, did he graduate from your institution, your organization? Is he a board member? Does he have children that attend your institution? No. Has he ever been on campus? Probably not. Then I'm saying your chances of getting his money are slim to none. He's not going to give you his money. What do you have to do? You have to get him or her involved. Basic principle. Get people involved. They become committed. The dollars follow the commitment. So you've got this billionaire across town. Then what do? You get him or her involved in your organization or in your institution some way. And when you do, you get them committed, and the dollars follow the commitment. So again, it's someone who can make a leadership gift from a campaign chair position. And I wanted to say this to you because we did a campaign for an institution several years ago, and we interviewed this lady in the feasibility study. And in our feasibility studies, we always ask the question, if we go forth in a campaign, would you and your family consider making a gift, yes or no? And so she gave us a range of $50,000 to $100,000 in the campaign, in the feasibility study. And so we got in the campaign, we decided to go and talk to her about possibly being a campaign chair. We want someone that can give a leadership gift as a chairperson of a campaign. You're not looking for someone who knows everybody in your area, someone that knows everybody in your organization. You're looking for a leadership gift. Underline that. You want campaign chairs to make a leadership gift. We know this, if they get involved, go back to this what I've talked, they get involved, what happens? They get committed, the dollars follow the commitment. So in this particular case, we decided to go and ask this lady if she would become a chair of the campaign. She turned us down. She said, I really don't know anybody. And so she said, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Then I followed it up with, I'm thinking up, right? I'm thinking up. I'm not walking away from there saying, oh, I'm so sorry, you can turn it down. I said, would you consider being a co-chair or a vice chair of the campaign? And she said, yeah, I'll do that. So she agreed to do it. We got her involved in the campaign, right? So when we sat down at the end of the campaign period and looked at who had made major gifts, her gift totaled over $400,000. $400,000. Now, had we not got her involved as a co-chair in the campaign, her gift would have probably been in that $50,000 to $100,000 range that she gave us. Now, I'll tell you this, it goes even further. She got on the board of directors, the board of trustees at the school after the campaign was over, and she made another $100,000 gift to the school. That's a really good example of getting people involved. So here's a story where a couple that they had just sat down and reviewed their wills and set up a charitable remainder trust for their children and grandchildren, and then the organization would benefit from that at some point in time. And so they had named a major university that they both attended. They had degrees from that university, and they endowed the scholarship in their mother and daddy's name. So during a recent football season, this couple became alarmed at student behavior and at several games and decided to write their concern to the university president, athletic director, university student newspaper, and newspaper editor. To their disappointment, they never received a response from any and that's what he said, any of my handwritten letters from anyone. And he said, I thought about this and the lack of response and the less value the integrity of those in charge, and asked the question, is this where I really want my hard-earned money to go? And so he said, I had a grandchild that attended another small university in another state. And he said, after visiting with the president of that school and talking about his vision for the future, I decided this school would receive the percentage of my estate that I had originally set aside for the university in my own state. So, a simple thank you, a simple response to your donors is what's important. Don't ignore anyone. I don't care if they send you a letter and they come down on you and they're saying things that may or may not be true. Always have a handwritten note. I remember even my days at Auburn, when we had issues, whatever issue that may be, and I would get these letters. Sometimes I didn't get a lot of letters, but I got some pretty negative letters. You know what I would do? I'd pick up the phone and call them. I didn't respond in writing. I pick up the phone and call them. And I'm going to tell you this. You could not believe, this person writes me this letter and it's really nasty. And when I get them on the phone, their whole attitude changes. You'd think this person and myself were the best of friends. So again, always respond to them. Always get back to people, regardless. Always respond to your donors. That's a really important point. It was this Princeton matching gift. I was in New York several years ago visiting with prospective donors and met with this retired gentleman who had a government job in Washington, D.C., and he was taking a job in the private sector. And so he told me this story. He said, I just accepted this new position and it was in the newspaper. And he said, shortly after the news release, He said, I got a letter from Princeton University. That's what his alma mater. He said, I got a letter from Princeton University telling him the company he was going to work for was a matching gift company. Now, I don't know about you, but I was impressed with Princeton. You know what? They went beyond the call of duty. They did their research. They checked this person out. They got a news release. He's a Princeton graduate. He's going to work for this XYZ company, and it's a matching gift company. Why not let the person let him know that? You may not know that going to work for a company. So I thought that was a really, really good story, and I couldn't tell you how impressed I was with Princeton's development office. So again, be proactive. Be proactive. All right, here's a story. Too busy to see a donor. The donor walks into the VP of Development's office and asks to see the VP for a moment. And the secretary said, "You have an appointment?" And he said, No, I'm just passing through. And so the secretary said, "Well, I'm sorry, he's really tied up and all day and will not be able to see you. Is there anything I can do to help you?" And he said, "Yes, you can help me." He pulled out a check for $20,000 that he wanted to pay on his pledge or make a gift. And he tore it up in front of her, tore up the check and gave it to the secretary and said, "Give this to the VP." You know, you're never too busy to see your donors. You're never too busy to see your donors. I don't care if it's just for a few minutes. This person that made this decision not to see anyone, he or she is probably in the wrong position. Okay, so this is an interesting think up note. Going back for a gift. Here's a gentleman that was a VP for a university over in Georgia. And so he takes his family on a family vacation, gets in his car, and he actually goes to see his mother and daddy who lives in another state. He drove about 7 hours to get over to his family, to see his family. But when he gets there, he gets a call from one of his donors. And he said, "Hey, John, let's meet in the morning for coffee. I have something important to share with you." John, the VP, did not tell his donor that I just had driven 7 hours and I actually at my mother and daddy's home. He just said, "I will see you at 8 a.m. So John, the VP, gets in his car, drops his family off, gets in his car and drives back 7 hours to meet with this gentleman at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, what happened in the meeting was it was worth it. The donor gave John a check for $1 million. Again, that's what you call going the extra mile. You go the extra mile, you're miles ahead of your competition. How many of us would do that? It's so easy to say, "Hey, John, can we meet next week? Or I'll be back in a few days. Can we meet then?" He didn't say that at all. This was a major donor giving the university a lot of money, and he was not going to tell him he wasn't coming. I really think this speaks volumes for this individual and the commitment he had to the university and to his job and also to the donor. All right, now this is a gentleman who 95 years old, and he gave his first gift. His first gift was $500,000 gift. And so the development officer did what? She gets this $500,000 gift and she picks up the phone and she calls the donor, right? That's exactly what you would do. You call the donor and thank him for that gift. And then she got on the airplane and she flew across the country, flew from the East Coast to the West Coast to meet with him, in person and thank him. Now, I mean, that's what you do. That again, that's going the extra mile. Now this gentleman, he gave $800,000 more when he turned 100, and he gave another $100,000 when he reached 103. So again, that's important. I applaud the development officer, and then she every year she went and visited with this gentleman every year. So if let's just say, for instance, he gives $50,000 or $100,000, the dollar amount doesn't matter. But here's a guy who makes his first time gift, and she gets on the phone and calls him and thanks him. Well, I'm sure she did her research. And if it's only $50,000, she still got on the airplane and flew coast to coast to sit down and visit with this gentleman and talk to him and thank him for his gift. Going the extra mile, again, is so important. And then she started every year, she visited with him personally. She went to see him personally and talked to him. That's why they got that kind of a gift. So she surely understands stewardship. Stewardship is so important today, and we're going to talk more about that as we go through this session. Let's talk about this next one, St. Francis Hospital. We were doing a $25 million campaign for St. Francis Hospital. We had identified this couple that had capability of 7 figures, and we met with them, the VP and myself, we met with them a number of times, and we made our pitch for a 7-figure gift, and we never could seem to get their interest in making the gift until on about the 3rd or 4th visit, we decided to take a picture of the lobby of the new hospital addition, and we put their names on that in the lobby in big bold print or letters, big bold block letters, indicating the lobby would be named in their honor. When they saw that, you could see a glow in their eyes, and it was definitely a turning point in our attempt to close, and close they did. They signed a pledge card for $1 million. You know, sometimes, you know, they talk about a picture's worth 1,000 words. In this particular case, that's exactly what happened. It was worth $1 million. And I would say, again, you got to think up. You got to think up. You got to think outside the box. Figure out this out. You know, this is not new today. And all of you have been in the fundraising business for a short period of time, know that showing people pictures of what their name may look like on a building or a room has a very positive effect. And so I would say to you, think about that when you're talking to people about making major gifts. Okay, let's talk about this one. This gentleman was in a feasibility study. This was a university campaign we did at a university when we asked him for a gift, and he had never made any substantial gifts to the university, and he gave us a range of $50,000 to $100,000 in the feasibility study. Now he was president and CEO of a major Fortune 500 company, or he was retired from that position. So we knew he had some resources, and we decided to ask him to chair the campaign, or to be a co-chair of the campaign. And here's what my philosophy is. I never go out and ask someone to be a co-chair of the campaign and also ask them for a outright gift in the same meeting. I don't do that. And so in this particular case, we took the president up. That was very important, to take the president. The president needs to be asking him to co-chair the campaign. And we did. We prepared the president. We went and had a meeting with this gentleman. You know, we said, we'd like you to co-chair the campaign. He said, well, let me think about it. He thought about it and agreed to do it. After he agreed, we came back and said, you know, as a co-chair of the campaign, we need to sit down and talk to you about your possible commitment to the campaign as a leader of the campaign. He said, okay, fine. So the VP and I talked about it. We decided to ask him for $250,000 payable over a 5-year period of time. Now, again, remember, he gave us a number of 50 to 100,000 in the study, but we decided he was certainly capable of doing the 250,000. Remember, he had done very, very little in gifts to the university prior to this feasibility study and prior to starting this campaign. So he agreed to meet with us. We went and had breakfast with him, and we sat down and talked to him. We went through my 5 steps. Remember, we talked about the 5 steps in the last meeting. We went through my 5 steps. The VP and myself met with this gentleman. You know, we got to step number 4, which is what? Now I'm asking this question. I'm sure you all know what step number 4 is. It's making the ask. And so I said to him, I'll call him John. John, we appreciate you being a co-chair. We appreciate your interest in the campaign. We'd like to ask you to consider a gift of $250,000, payable in equal amounts of $50,000 per year over the next 5 years in support of the campaign. Then what do? Once you make the ask, what happens?
What?
Silence. You don't say a word. You wait for a response. He said to me, okay, he said, how many people have you asked for $250,000 since the start of this campaign? And I said, well, all 4 co-chairs, the other 3 co-chairs, we have 4 co-chairs. The other 3 co-chairs have all done $250,000 or more. And that was true. He said, okay. He said, I'm going to do 250,000, but I'm going to do more. Now, you're sitting where I'm sitting, and I've made this statement a number of times, and I've told this story so many times, and I'm sure you probably have already heard it before. But, you know, again, I always say, this is not brain surgery. You know, this is common sense. And so I just said to him, how much more? How much more? Right? That's a good question. And he said, I'm going to do $1 million. Now, what's my next statement? What do I do now? He said, I'm going to do $1 million. I said, what? The next step, my statement I made was, do you feel comfortable in signing a pledge card for that amount today? And he said, yes. And I pulled out my pledge card. I got him to sign my pledge card that day, that morning. And, you know, we walked out of there in an hour with a $1 million. All right. So anyway, that's the story about the $1 million ask and close. And again, this guy came back and did an insurance policy for another $1 million. So you can see how important it is when you get into campaigns and you get people to thinking, and their gifts, again, they give more than what they indicated or what they had done in the past. And so that's why it's so important. All right, let's talk about this. Never assume. That's a great statement. You never make assumptions. We had a gentleman that worked for us, Mark Martin, who's a great fundraiser over 10 years and very knowledgeable in this business. And so we did a feasibility study at this school, and this gentleman gave us a range of $50,000 to $100,000. You think that's all anybody ever gives us the range in, but it's really not. But in this particular case, he gave us a range of $50,000 to $100,000. And so Mark was on site there at this school. And as the development officer was preparing the solicitation packet, Mark said, what's the ask amount? And the girl said $30,000. And he said, why? He gave us a much higher number than that in the feasibility study. And she said, the development officer said, well, he gives 2 scholarships and is a major annual fund contributor. So I assumed he would not do more than $30,000. To Mark's credit and experience, he said, no, we're not going to ask for $30,000. He said, I recommend we ask for $125,000. Remember, the high number in his feasibility study was 100. So Mark and the development officer visit with the prospect, asked for $125,000. The prospect not only said yes, he signed the pledge card at that meeting. So again, don't assume what someone may or may not do. Your job is to go out and ask for it. And when you look at ranges and feasibility studies, we never go in and ask for the high number. We always add about 30% to that high number. So 125,000 is a good number to go ask for. And that's what they did. And that's what he did. So again, never make assumptions in this business. All right. Let's talk about this. This is a $17 million estate gift. Now this is really interesting because you never know in this business. And if you stay in the business as long as I have, you'll run into everything. So here we're in a university campaign, and we're talking to this 88-year-old retired professor. I think he was a chemistry professor. And so we were talking to him in a preliminary meeting about us presenting a proposal to him, asking permission if we could put a proposal together for him to consider an outright gift. And he said, well, no, not really. He said, you know, I'm too old to do a pledge. And he said, I don't think I want to do that. And so here I am, I'm thinking up again, right? And that's what you have to do. I'm thinking up. And I said to him, when he said that I don't think I can do an outright gift or a pledge, I said, have you ever thought about, after your church and your children, putting the school in your estate plans? And he said, matter of fact, I already have the school in my estate plans. And I said, you do? He said, yeah. And I said, can you tell me the value of your portion of your estate that you're going to leave to this university? And he said, well, I think it's 20 million. And we couldn't believe it. $20 million. And I said, can you verify that? He said, yeah. So he came back in a couple of weeks and he said, well, it's not 20, 17 million. He said, right now it's 56.5% of his estate is what's going to that school. Now, that was several years ago. This gentleman is still alive. And I'm going to tell you, his estate continues to grow. And there's no telling what that estate is worth today. I would say it may be $30 million that's going to come to that university at his death and his wife's death. Again, you never know, but you be prepared to think up when they give you a no, or they tell you, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I'm comfortable doing that. Here's an 88-year-old man. And I'm saying, you thought about putting the school in your estate plans. And he did that. So again, you can really get excited about a gift like that, an estate gift like that. And they're out there. And this school did not know this gentleman had them in his estate at all. Didn't know he had a lot of money. Didn't know he had a lot of money. I asked him, I said, well, how'd you accumulate the wealth you have? He said, well, I buy and I never sell. He said, I always buy stocks with dividends. He said, I generate about over $1 million a year in dividends. So, but he told me about buying Aflac stock. And he said, when the founder of Aflac came to him, and he said, I knew him back then. He said, he came to me and said he was starting this company, Aflac. And he said, you ought to buy some stock in it. So he said, I did. He said, I had to go to the bank and borrow some money. And he said, I think I bought about $900 worth of Aflac stock. He is the original Aflac stock, and has that original stock, and there's no telling what that stock is worth today. He's never sold it, and you can imagine how that stock is split and doubled over the years. So again, you never know, and that's why you always are thinking up. Okay, getting around the gatekeeper. So when I was at Auburn, we were in the middle of a campaign, and they got an appointment with a CEO of a major company in Birmingham, and I went to see the CEO because I was going to ask him for permission to bring a proposal back to him for his and his company's consideration. I get there, the assistant says to me, his assistant, she says, the CEO can't see you today. He's busy, but I'm authorized to give you $25,000 for your campaign. If you'll send me a proposal, send me something in writing, we'll certainly cut you a check for $25,000. And I said, okay, thank you very much. I went back and got in my car and said to myself, no way I'm going to ask him for $25,000. This company can do a lot more than that. So we went back and we sat down and started strategizing about that. And we put together a proposal for $750,000. I called the assistant up and I said, we've got a proposal ready, but we'd like to come in and thank the CEO for accepting our proposal. And I didn't mention the dollar amount, but the dollar amount was $750,000. I took 7 university representatives to me with a meeting. And here's a basic philosophy of mine. You never take anyone to a meeting that doesn't have a role in that meeting. So you don't take someone just to look good. Everyone has to have a role. And so we went into the meeting, and one of the people we took to the meeting was a board member of this company and also a member of our foundation board. So here's what happened. We walk into the meeting, and there's 7 chairs lined up facing this one chair, and the CEO is sitting there looking at all 7 of us. And we walk in, and the gentleman who is on the board of trustees, or board of directors of this company, and is also on our foundation board, said, Henry, we're coming in here today. We're going to ask you for $750,000, but you ought to give them $1 million. Well, now, how would you like to start a meeting off with that introduction? And so we sat down and we went through our presentation. We made our plan. The CEO sat there in his chair. I'll never forget. It's like I was there yesterday. And he's got a pad in front of him. He's making notes. He never says much. I mean, if he says 20 words, that was more than I think he was planning on saying. But he didn't say much. And so we said, we'd like to ask you to consider, you and the company consider $750,000. Let me go back and make a note. I never told the assistant, I never told her I was coming to make a proposal for $750,000. I think she thought I was still coming back with that $25,000. A couple of weeks later, we get a letter from the CEO, and he committed to $500,000. That was the largest gift. It wasn't $1 million, but it was the largest company gift that they had ever made. Again, I'm thinking up, and that's what you have to do. You have to think about this and think up and think above where you think this person really is. Bottom line, here's a guy who's 95 years old. He's the college president college president has secured the largest gift the school has ever received. And the gentleman says, I'm ready to commit $100 million to your campaign. And he said, I'm ready to sign a pledge for the $100 million. So the president and the VP of development fly to New York City and meet with this gentleman in his office. They found the donor when they came in, the president and the VP, when they found the donor, he's sitting behind his big conference table. He's got about 10 lawyers sitting there with him. And so the president said, we got to go over a few papers. And so he pulls out this stack of papers about a foot high and starts reviewing these with the prospective donor before the signing. Remember, this guy's 95 years old. He looked at the president and said, I could be dead before I finish reading all these pages. So let's get to the bottom line. He said, he then began flipping all the pages over very quickly until he came to the last page that required his signature. He signed his name to the dismay of all of the attorneys in the room. Again, get to the bottom line. What is that? There are people out there that you're going to see, and in cultivation calls, I want to make another point. When you're making cultivation calls, you've got to read body language. You've got to read a little bit about this individual. Is this person a bottom line person? There are people like that. You cannot go in and tell them everything in your life history or everything you think you want to tell them. I think you've got to be prepared for, there's some people want to talk to you, but there's some people who want you to get to the bottom line. And sometimes you have to create your, we call it your elevator speech. We're working with a major university up in the Midwest, and it's an athletic campaign. And so I've told them, you got to have an elevator speech. I created an elevator speech for them, and I laminated it. I put it on a card, laminated it. So put it in your pocket. This is what you learn. When you go in to talk to people, this is your elevator speech. The same thing holds true here. You've got to understand some people are bottom line people, and you can't spend ever and ever and ever before you get to the request. So understand that. So now this one is an interesting story. And I'll title this Dogs and More Dogs. There was a gentleman that was a wealthy ship owner. He became interested. This is years before I was at Auburn, before I actually worked in Auburn. But he was a gentleman who had heard about Auburn's veterinary medicine program, and especially the small animal surgery at Auburn Veterinary School. And so he said that he would offer anyone who contributed to the research fund to assist the center, that he would match that gift, whatever that may be. So there was a veterinarian named Dr. Fredrickson who lived in South Florida. He was a well-known practicing veterinarian in Hollywood, Florida. He suggested to his client, Miss Eleanor Ritchie, who would come in to see him to bring some of her dogs in for him to treat. He said to her, Miss Ritchie, you might want to consider contributing to this Scott Fund because it affects the small animal and dogs because you love them so much. And so Miss Ritchie did not make a gift to this fund at all. But several years later, it was discovered at her death. This was in 1968. Miss Ritchie left her entire estate to the small animal clinic at Auburn University. I don't think she'd ever set foot on the Auburn campus. Turns out Miss Ritchie was the granddaughter of Philip Banker, co-founder of Quaker State Oil Company, and the sole heir of the Quaker State Oil stock. Her gift was reported to be worth $4.2 million, which at that time was the largest single gift to Auburn University. That was 1968. Now, here's what happened. There was a catch. The will stipulated that none of the estate would transfer to Auburn until the last of the, get this, she had 162 dogs. Until the last of the 162 dogs at the shelter had died. And she had a 192-acre ranch there in Florida. And they had to die of natural causes. So of course, Auburn, first thing Auburn did was separate the the females and males apart. The last dog of the 162 died in June the 4th, 1984. So the amount transferred to Auburn at that time was over $12 million. That was 16 years later after they got the 4.2, or was going to get the 4.2, but they had to wait for the last dog to die. So again, you never know. You never know. Now, Dr. Fredrickson did not know Miss Ritchie was that well off. She'd come and she'd bring a carload of dogs with her, but he never knew she had that many dogs. And she always drove in a new Cadillac. But you know, the point here is be genuine and sincere with all of your donors. You never know what's going to happen, because he mentioned it to her. You know, I guess she put that back in her file and decided, hey, this is where I'm going to leave my money. This is my 60, 30, 10 plan. And I think I've gone beyond that in my slides here, but I'll tell you about it anyway. There was a grandparent at a school that we work with, and he lived in another state. And so when they sent him a proposal, or not sent him an annual fund solicitation, he told the head of school, he said, if you raise $75,000, I will match that $75,000. So he did. And then the school goes into a campaign, and we solicit, we have a feasibility study with him. And so he says during the feasibility study that he would consider $150,000 to $250,000. Gave us a gift range. We decided to go solicit him personally in the campaign. And when we did, he said to us, let me back up. So on the day of the meeting, the head of school and myself, we're going to the meeting, and he said to me, Jerry, I've got two proposals with me, one for $2 million and one for $3 million. And he said, which one do you think we ought to ask for? And I said, first of all, I never go into a meeting with two proposals. You got to decide. I'm not smart enough to figure out when I get into the meeting, I'm going to pull out the $2 million proposal or the $3 million proposal. And I said, we got to decide on one or the other. And I decided, let's go for the $2 million proposal, not the $3 million proposal, which is what we did. And we asked him for $2 million. And he made it clear in the meeting that that was not the amount that he had in mind. He said, I know I didn't give you this amount in the feasibility study. I said, no. And I said, you know, what we're doing, I said, and I came back with him because he said, what was my range in that feasibility study? And I told him, and I said, for us to reach our goal, we're having to challenge people to do all they can do, knowing that anything you do is certainly going to be appreciated, but we'd like for you to consider a gift of $2 million, payable equal amounts over a 3-year period of time. And he said, okay, we'll consider. But he said, he said, I have to tell you this. He said, I have a 60-30-10 plan. He said, I decided recently to give 60% of every dollar I make to my church and Christian education, 30% to maintain my current living style, and 10% to my children. Now, the end of that story is he didn't give the $2 million, but he gave $1.5 million. And subsequent to that, he has given more than that to the school because they've got him involved. So again, you want to think up and sell the donor what the donor wants to buy. Okay, now we're caught up here. When a donor tells you what they're going to do, you know, this is important. You know, we had a donor where we went in and we were going to ask this donor for $50,000. So I've got a pledge. I got a proposal for $50,000 payable over 3 years. I take the chairman of the campaign with me. We walk in, we sit down, and we didn't get seated, and we're not there more than 5 minutes until the gentleman says to us, I know why you're here. You're here to talk about the campaign, and my wife and I have decided we're going to give you $500. Well, now what do? You're sitting there with a proposal. I've got that proposal in my hand, and that proposal is for $50,000. What are you going to do? You're going to say, well, thank you very much, and you know, and you get up and leave? No, I said, thank you for that commitment of 500. However, that's not the dollar amount in this proposal I have in my hand. And she said, well, what do you have in, what's the proposal amount in your hand? And so then I started on my second, remember my 5 points? I was already in the small talk now, but then I go to step number 2 and tell them why I'm here. And I get to step number 4, which is what? Making the ask. And I said, you know, we'd like for you to consider a gift of $50,000 payable in equal amounts of $16,000 plus over the next 3 years in support of the campaign. And he said, oh, if it's over 3 years, we might be able to consider that. Well, he didn't do the $50,000, but he did $15,000. Now that's a long way. That's a long way from the $500 he gave us. So he was also, we also talked to him about a deferred gift, which you could certainly do at that time because they were old enough to do that. The point I'm trying to make here is when somebody shortcuts you and somebody cuts you off at the pass, you got to be able to bounce back. You got to be able to think up. You got to be able to think on your feet. And so I said, that's not the dollar amount we have in our proposal. And he said, well, she said, what do you have in our proposal? And then I went right back to, okay, let me go through my 5 steps. And I started with step number 4 and walked through that. Step number 2 and walked all the way through to my answer. All right, let's talk about this one. What a big donor wants. A graduate of Notre Dame and his wife recently made a $100 million estate gift with no strings attached to his institution. Now, that in itself is really unusual. They're going to make a $100 million gift to Notre Dame, and with no strings attached to that at all. But the Chronicle of Philanthropy wrote an article, and they asked the couple. They said, what is it? What are the points that you would like fundraisers to know about asking for gifts? And they had 4 points. One is they said, know what is important in the donor's life. Know what's important. When you show us, about us, that goes a long way. What does that mean? That means, you send them birthday cards or anniversary cards or whatever. Then that's where you've got to be. I've talked about this before. You got to be sincere. You got to be genuine. You cannot be a phony in this business, and it won't work. It will not work. Number 2, they say don't ask for money, but what they really mean is make donors feel like there's zero expectation to give. When you go in and you start cultivating this major donor, don't go in thinking that, everything you say and everything you do will lead to a gift. Build that relationship first. Build that relationship first. And that's what they're talking about, is make donors feel like there's zero expectation to give. Then number 3 is don't take a donor's help for granted. In other words, and they said in this particular case, they said they asked us, the Notre Dame asked them, would you host a dinner for some of our major donors? And they said yes. And so this couple hired a celebrity chef, and they raised $1.7 million at this dinner. Then they came back the next year. Notre Dame came back the next year and said, would you do it again? And the couple said, we reluctantly agreed, but told the organization, the university, that was our last. We would not do this again. We raised over $2 million in this dinner. The charity came back a 3rd time, and we said, no, we're not doing it again. We're not doing it again. And number 4, make acknowledgments and communications personal. Every one of you that's in this business know that. You make it personal. And they made the example. They said, don't send me a mug, or a hat. Instead do the simple things like sending handwritten notes and cards. That's important. Handwritten notes and cards. You know what you're doing? You're going the extra mile. Remember, we talked about it earlier. You're going the extra mile. And that's what people appreciate. And that builds relationships, solid relationships, that then you can certainly make a huge difference when they're thinking about making a gift for you. So listen to what donors are saying to you. Listen to them what they're saying to you. This is I've talked about this before, but thank you notes and letters are really, really important. And stewardship is important. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But I want to talk about this second point here, abusing donor intent. I recently read a book entitled Abusing Donor Intent, and it was by Doug White. It's the story of Charles and Marie Robertson, who gave $35 million in 1961 to Princeton's Woodrow Wilson School for Public Policy and International Affairs. It was the largest one-time gift amount at the time to anyone had ever donated to benefit a university. By 2002, the fund had grown to $700 million, and by spring of 2008, it had grown to $850 million. Beginning in 2002, Bill Robertson, son of Charles and Marie, filed a lawsuit against Princeton University, claiming they did not follow the intent and instructions of his parents. The lawsuit took 6 years, and Bill and his family won and took the money back. $40 million for legal fees, $100 million to be used to start a new foundation. So the author listed the following. which I believe are to really be important. Require each board member to review the terms of endowed gifts. In particular, avoid using the word in perpetuity. Number 2, be specific. Number 3, the charity should provide relevant information in a timely manner to the donors. Number 4, donors need to be more diligent in tracking how their money is used. Hold the charitable accountable. Let me tell you examples about this. They had so much money that came in there at Princeton. Other colleges within the university system came over and said, you know, I've got to provide some, and this is what happened. Dean of the business said, I need some new office furniture, new carpet in my office. And so they gave him the money. They took the money out of this fund and provided furniture and carpet for the dean's office. That's what got him in trouble. So, you know, you got to follow what's in the written agreement and make sure that you stay close to that without going something else that's against the donor's intent. But, you know, this is really a great book to read, because it talks about, you know, you really got to make sure that you understand, and the boards have to understand that when a donor says, I'm going to do this is what I want, this, and this, you've got to make sure that you honor that intent. Okay. You know, thank you calls. We worked with a organization years ago, and I made a presentation to a group, and this gentleman who was the CEO of this organization, and I said to him, you know, you should call everyone. Every time you make a gift, you should pick up the phone and call them. And he came up to me after the session. He said, I can do that. That's a great idea, Jerry. I can do that. And so he began calling everyone. If you send him a pledge card, let me tell you, if you send him $2 or $1, he'd pick up the phone and call you. He called everyone. If you send in a pledge payment, he called you. He said, you know, I'd ride up and down the road a lot. I was in my car a lot. And he said, it was easy for me to start calling people. And that's what I did. Now, we did a campaign for that organization. And I can tell you, the CEO and myself, we made a lot of calls together. We walked into a couple's home, and the first thing they said to us was, you know, he calls me every time I make a gift. He calls me every time I make a pledge payment. That stood out with them. Let me tell you what he was doing. He was separating himself from the also run. He was separating himself from everybody else. There are 1.4 million nonprofit organizations out there. They're growing by 30 to 40,000 per year. Everybody's got their hand out. You got to separate yourself from all the rest of them. And so you got to do things differently. And that's why these thank you calls are something different, not just necessarily sending a typewritten letter that maybe we talked about earlier. So again, just keep that in mind. I think also that your boards, you don't have to, you can say to your board, listen, here's 5 people that have made gifts to us in the last couple of weeks or last month or whatever it may be. Would you pick up the phone and call them? You don't have to tell them how much that they have given. And the boards probably will not talk to them personally, because they'll probably get their answer machine, but leaving a message on there. Hey, John, this is Jerry. I'm a board member at XYZ school or university. I just wanted to call and thank you for your recent gift you made to our university or our school or our organization. That goes a long, long way. And so, you know, one of the things too is about stewardship reports. I think this is so important. I've been talking about stewardship reports for 30 years. I'm yet to find an organization that does a great job of stewardship. They don't do it. You don't do it. Now, we talk about it and you'll say, yeah, we do stewardship, but you don't do it. And I'm telling you, it's so important today because of what I just said about the competition that's out there for that charitable dollar. We're working on what we call an automated stewardship report. And when we get this completed, we'll certainly share it with you, but it's going to help you as a tickler file. Here, you've got to touch people 5 times during the year, 5 times during the year. And so you can put your own 5 touches in there. But once you put the 5 touches in to our program, then it will remind you when you need to be doing that touches. And so it's a way to really help you be more structured and organized and doing stewardship. And it is so, so important today, because if you don't do stewardship, that gentleman or that couple that you get a gift to, they're going somewhere else. I'm telling you, I'm working with a lot of universities today, and development officers they have a one-track mind. And that one-track mind is, I'm gonna get this gift and I'm moving on. And they do move on. And they don't steward the gifts. They forget about that person who gave them this major gift until it's time for that person's pledge is paid up and they want to go back and ask for another gift. That's not the way you build relationships. That's not the way you increase a gift. We said it before. The smallest gift a person makes, their first gift is their smallest gift. And if you do stewardship, you do relationship building, and you cultivate that relationship, then they ought to give at a larger gift the next time up. So stewardship is so important to you. And, hopefully we'll talk more about it. But as soon as that program gets implemented, we're testing it out now on a couple of organizations to see how it goes. I think all of you certainly would benefit from it, and we'll certainly make sure you get a copy of that. All right, so if you think up, you'll succeed in reaching your fundraising goals. Again, the point of this whole session today was to get you to think outside the box, think up, think differently than other people. So be excited about what you do. And this is, as I've said many, many times, this is a great profession. This is a great profession. And there are a lot of people out there with resources. And, remember we talked about in one of our first sessions, the American public gave away $557 billion last year, $557 billion. There's a lot of money out there for you. But I'm going to tell you this, they're not coming to knock on your door, and they're not coming to give you a check. And when they do, I would say to you, if you ask them for that gift, remember what I said before, you ask them for a gift, you get 5 times that amount. So they come in and want to ask you for and give you a gift, politely decline until you can get back to them and present a proposal to them and probably ask them for 5 times that amount. I'm pretty close to my end of my time here. We've covered a lot of ground, which we always do. I'm recording this. I think, you certainly can go back and listen to my recording. I think it's helpful to do that. There are a lot of little small points in this presentation that I think would help you in moving forward in your business of fundraising. I don't know if any questions or not, but
Jerry, I have a question for you. You talked earlier about the co-chairs and how you always do the co-chair ask first before you do the ask them for the money or give them the proposal. Have you ever had a situation where you asked somebody to be a co-chair, and when it came down to the proposal, they essentially lowballed you on the amount?
yes, we've had that before, but that's not very often, because I'm not going to ask someone to be a co-chair if they gave me $5,000 to $10,000 in the feasibility study. I mean, so I'm going to ask someone who gave me a pretty high range. That's what we do. We look at that and we say, okay, here this person gave us a range of 100 to 200, or gave us a range of 200 to 300. Those and I'll take those names from the feasibility study and I sit down with the VP or the head of the organization and I say, here are 3 people that I think, they've given us a high dollar range. Do these people fit with you and your personality? And do you think they have the character, integrity, and all those other qualities you look for in a campaign chair? And, and if they say yes, I never go in.
So you're just gambling and doing your homework to get to that point. I got you.
Yeah, but I'm not going to go in too and have plan A, plan B, and plan C. I'm only going to have plan A. So I'm going in and ask John Smith to be in, his wife or spouse or whatever, to be the campaign co-chair. And now if he says no, then I go back to the drawing board and look again. But rarely they don't, and especially when you tell them what they have to do. And that's why I'm like to be involved with when we go ask the individuals to be a co-chair or a chair, because what do you think the first question they ask? What are my responsibilities? And I'm saying, all we want is your name and signature, and having your name associated with the campaign gives this campaign a lot of credit and integrity. And so we want to use your name. I'm not asking that person to go out and solicit. Now, if he or she wants to open the door for me, that's fine for a prospect, but I don't expect it. I'm not looking for it. What I'm looking for is a leadership gift. And almost every time you get somebody involved as a co-chair, their gift goes up. they give us a number in the feasibility study, that number goes up. I can give you a number of illustrations where that's happened and throughout the campaigns we've done. So again, I
Okay.
don't, yeah. Well, thank y'all for being on board. We got one more session and then we'll have the final exam. All right, y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Jerry.
Great weekend.
Thanks, Jerry. Great session.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.